Hello, everybody. How you doing? It's Margaret, but you knew that. We're initiating a new live series for the month of February. There's a lot going on in February, so I felt like I wanted to do more content, but my posting schedule is rather complicated, and I couldn't figure out easily how to put another video in there. This is what it looks like. This is like the alchemy that goes into the video making and posting. So I'm taking the easy way out and doing a live video, and I'm calling it Friday Night Lives for February. This is entirely, well, not entirely, but I'm going to blame Amrita for the title, at least. Amrita by the Book is a fabulous channel you should check out. She was just talking about Friday Night Lights, the series, and how she initially was skeptical, but actually thinks it's one of the best TV series ever. I think this is because of the BookTube backstage tag, or maybe it was just something else that had to do with TV where she was talking about it. But she was talking about that show, and I was initially skeptical as well, but maybe I'll give it a try. I don't know. So anyway, this is me, and it's Friday afternoon here in Portland, but I'm guessing that's night for many of you because you're east of me. And yeah, first week of February. What I wanted to do today was a little dramatic reading because the first book, well, not the first, I've gone through 3 books already, but Souls of Black Folk is the one I'm reading at the moment. I am maybe a third of the way through, and it's really good. There are some lines that definitely stuck with me, and there's a lot of text that's probably come down to me, trickled down, if you will, through other sources, and so it doesn't seem as revolutionary as it might have then in 1903 when this was written. Can you believe it? Still applicable. Sad, but not shocking. And so, yeah, so I thought I'd do some of the lines that I thought were really interesting and share them with you tonight. The other ideas I had for Friday, February lives were guess which persuasion character I am. I was going to try to act out. So we had sort of an Austen theme for January, and I was thinking of using the movies of Persuasion. There's 2 versions that I know pretty well, and imitating the characters in those and having people guess. I thought that would be pretty funny. But it doesn't really go with this theme, so I'm stepping off on the Black History Month theme rather than the goofy Austen theme, which is so January, really. So I don't really have much of a theme otherwise. I had a couple of reminders, and I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. This is part of my BookTube backstage, which Reiner will hear about. So coming up this month, I have my first ever Patreon book club meeting. It's on Sunday, February 21st, and the book is Survival Math by Mitchell S. Jackson. And I just saw that he was elected or accepted to be on the board of Literary Arts, which is like the big literature establishment here in Portland, Oregon, which is super fun. So that's pretty cool. He's still in New York, but he's on the board because boards of directors just be like that, I guess. And then the other announcement reminder is March of the Moderns. So the readathon that I'm coordinating that's going to happen all of March is about modern written books, which means basically where Victober left off up to the end of World War II. We start getting into postmodern and all that crazy art scene, which is not my scene. So March of the Moderns is March 1st through 31st. We've got buddy reads going. We've got a bingo board with different prompts to help you find more diverse reads from this period. And we got special guests. So that's basically what I thought of to pull together and make a special something for people. If people do get a bingo, the other fun idea I had was sending someone a free Persephone book. Persephone being very into the modern time period. So I thought that would be like a nice branding link, partnering, but they're not partnering with me. So it's just me. Yeah, so that's March, and I have the link that I will put up here. I just checked this, and you'll have to copy it down unless I copy it into the chat. I'll do that. The spreadsheet that this leads to, just checked, and Katya signed up. So now we have 3 people who signed up, and the 2 originally who were I'd already corralled into doing a buddy read. So that was super fun. So let me put that back up. There we go. So Marissa from Blatantly Bookish, and Katya Weinert from her self-named channel, and Tony from Book Text, and Lana from Lana X Libris, and Angie from Literary Labors. And I think I still have her as a maybe, but maybe if she checks, she'll change that so that we know we're going to read that book. But yeah, so it's shaping up to be very exciting. It's almost like a booktube spin because I have all these books that I could not possibly get to. And people are just putting their names next to them, and that'll determine which ones I read, because if no one signs up for one, then I'll probably drop that by the wayside the quickest. So process of elimination, I suppose. But yeah, some very exciting reads, and lots of ones there. I don't think there's any rereads there. So hey, Janae's on. Yay. I need to get better at this. I'm just going to practice the timing, and we're going to do this smoothly. Pop it up, put it away. Yes. And yeah, so hopefully we'll get lots of buddies reading. We'll have lots of little live shows popping up here and there to talk about the first half of the 20th century. I have scheduled a historical fiction author, Camille DeMaio, and a historian from the region. She's Washington. She does a bunch of stuff in Washington State. And we're going to be reading Their Eyes Were Watching God. So, yes. I saw you just put up your video, so I figured she's probably lurking on the internet still. So I had the time wrong like twice, so don't worry. It was me. Yes, so I'm excited to be reading that finally. And like I said, no rereads. It's all these just big classics and tucked away, forgotten, should-be classics that I will be exploring in March. But back to February. So let's see. I will show you what else I have been reading. So along with the history angle, Oregon Historical Quarterly. It's funny because this came not too long ago, and I usually let them sit and cure for a while, like when you buy books and they sit on your shelf for like 6 months and you're like, oh, yeah, I meant to read that. That's what happens with these magazines as well. But the first one I read, I got right into the first article called Reclaiming the Portland Riverfront. And it was so nerdy. It was all about urban planning and city council kind of stuff, and neighborhood action committees and how they formed and beat back this initiative that the helicopter people were advocating to save a part of a waterfront that wasn't, covered by freeways already. And yeah, so I was reading this going, wow, this is totally like one of the stories my mom tells, because my mom was on local government in California and had oodles of these stories. Oh my gosh, let me tell you about that time when someone said that they were going to do this, or let me tell you about that time when they had a secret deal and I just blew it up, and let me tell you about that time. So it was funny that I found such a similar story in the Portland, Oregon archives that I want my mom to write down her versions of in California. Yeah. I've got other books on the go, but I think I will do the quotes that I wanted to from, and Janae will help me with this because she will know better. She she's telling me in the comments about Atlanta University claiming WEB, and I was saying Dubois, and now I'm kind of going, is it Du Bois? Because I'm a French speaker, so I want to say Dubois, and then like I don't know how Americans say it. But anyway, yes, claimed by Atlanta University because he did his great work there, even though he went to study at Fisk. So there's apparently some rivalry. There's apparently some side eye going on. But yeah, so like I said, I'm about a third of the way through, and these are just quotes that jumped out at me and made me like think because I hadn't seen these before, which is fun. Places to stop and think. So this is actually the introduction. This is not him. This is Saunders Redding from the Hampton Institute, because this is from 1950s. This is 50 years after it was published. And it has a bearing on the classics community. So I have several friends on BookTube. Oh, see, I've neglected the comments. Okay. Okay, so I'll say Dubois. I heard you say it that way too, so I felt a little better. Yes, New Orleans says it the French way. There we go. Why did I ever doubt it? Yes, thank you. So the classics community. Here's what Saunders Redding has to say about the Souls of Black Folk and being a classic. It is impossible to say, finally, what makes a literary classic, for no two are alike. No two are alike for the simplest and best of reasons. Each is the expression of an individual, of a particular genius. Classics have only this in common. They minister to universal emotional needs. They supply something vital to the universal intellect. The Souls of Black Folk does this by expressing the soul of one people in a time of great stress and showing its kinship with the timeless soul of all mankind. The Souls of Black Folk will go on doing this. Not counting the European, this is the 26th edition. It will not be the last. Yeah, it's just the version I've got. So I thought that was really interesting because I've always sort of looked askance at the word classic because it gets into a dicey area of like cultural hegemony where I don't want to judge and say this is a classic, this is not. Hey, and Nicole is here, and Lauren is here. Yes, hello and welcome. So yeah, you don't want to be in a position of judging other people's opinions about categories and labels. I'm very wary of that. And is a classic just because it's sat around for a long time? Is it because it's from a certain period and gets lumped in with the great writers of that period, even though it's not that great? Whenever someone says as well, it's a perfect novel or it's almost a perfect novel, I'm always like, how how do you claim that? That just sounds so strange to me. Reading seems such a subjective experience, and I'm sure publishing experts and people in the publishing industry will definitely have a more formulaic or commercial viewpoint on what is a successful novel. But I feel like, how can you say if something is a perfect novel because it's such a subjective judgment to me? So, and I love seeing people on BookTube talk about classics and saying like the books that everyone loves that they hate, or like the ones that they're ashamed to admit that they don't like. It's like, who cares? Like it's it just seems funny to me. It's one of these things like, why are we so obsessed about this, or why do we get hung up on this? And so I just thought that was interesting that they have it in this book and talking about classics and the souls and all that good stuff. Okay, and then what is this next piece? This is in the 50 years after portion, which is written by Dubois himself, and it's at the very end. he's sort of updating and saying that this is what I thought 50 years ago, and I don't want to change it because I want it to stand for how I was thinking back then. And I thought that makes sense to me because people should evolve and they shouldn't be ashamed of evolving, right? If you have an opinion that you change, you're entitled to change. We all hope some people change, right? So, yeah. So here's the quote that I liked at the end of that piece. I still think today as yesterday that the color line is a great problem of this century. But today I see more clearly than yesterday that back of the problem of race and color lies a greater problem which both obscures and implements it. And that is the fact that so many civilized persons are willing to live in comfort, even if the price of this is poverty, ignorance, and disease of the majority of their fellow men. That to maintain this privilege, men have waged war until today, war tends to become universal and continuous, and the excuse for this war continues largely to be color and race. Ugh. And yes, like Janae was saying, and for Nicole and Lauren, I'm reading The Souls of Black Folk for the first time, but Janae was just saying she reread it, and it's sadly still applicable. And so this is one of those things I looked at, and all the commentators that today are talking, well, they were saying it 50 years ago too, that are talking about the continual state of war and the military industrial complex and now the prison industrial complex and all these things that keep the wheels turning for those in power, meanwhile not giving us any space to have civil discourse, to have an electorate that is informed and has like muscle behind it. We're all being duped. We're all being narcotized. No. Opiate of the people type stuff. And so this continual war state, this continual opiate state of, I mean, I think it's social media now, which is why BookTube is like a little ray of sunlight in a big field of like darkness, I feel like. I don't know. Social media is a whole nother discussion, but yeah. Yeah. Poverty, ignorance, and disease. All right. Well, it's how do you feel about things from a long time ago that were in bad shape continuing to be true? Is that part of the human condition? Is that part of the American experiment and we're just really slow at changing things? What do you think? Like, I'm trying to think if there are examples I can think of on the spot. I'm terrible at thinking of book examples on the spot, but things where women used to be treated a certain way or assumed certain things, and that's completely foreign now. I feel like there are books like this. Like if you read Victorian books or you read Edwardian books and you're like, oh, well, obviously she'd be going out to work, or obviously she'd be able to walk that place by herself. Like there's definite changes in the gender gap that we can say we've left that behind. But I feel like in race, the attitudes and the prejudices are to a big extent still there, which is they're so stubborn. It's hard to comprehend why, if we're all working to evolve, that this is still true, but it is. And here's the part, so Janae, we were having a great conversation in the comments, so you've already heard this, so apologies for repeating. But this is page 60. W.E.B. Du Bois goes back to the place where he was at right after school and sort of like 10 years later checks in to see how people are and what's become of them after his kind of like AmeriCorps school teaching days in the 1880s. He left and then he comes back 10 years later to see how everyone's faring. And he has all these interesting, recollections of how people's lives turned out and, draws conclusions from this. And the one that stood out to me, well, I'll read a little bit around it as well. Um, All this caused us to think some thoughts together, but these, when ripe for speech, were spoken in various languages. I think this means people think differently about how the Reconstruction efforts played out. Those whose eyes were those whose eyes 25 and more years before had seen the glory of the coming of the Lord saw in every present hindrance or help a dark fatalism bound to bring all things right in his own good time. The mass of those to whom slavery was a dim recollection of childhood found the world a puzzling thing. It asked little of them, and they answered with little, and yet it ridiculed their offering. Such a paradox they could not understand, and therefore sank into listless indifference or shiftlessness or reckless bravado. And then he talks about specific individuals he knew. And to me, who learned so little about Reconstruction in high school, yes, okay, let me stop my thought. And yeah, slavery was only a little while ago and the country was stolen, founded on that premise. So yeah, it's like a 180 because that's the most change you can make. So yeah, it's a big change to turn that ship. And then also Janae says, I think that sometimes we believe that we've made so much progress, and there has been progress, but not nearly as much as those in power want us to believe. And by us, I mean all of us. Plus AA, is that African American? Yeah. Yeah, on both sides of the veil. Yeah. So, but I was going to say what this did was put it into a more psychological context for me, because when I had learned about Reconstruction, like I didn't even know about the Compromise of 1876 in high school. Like I learned about that in the past 2 years when I was doing research for my next novel. And I was like, this is a huge thing. Why is this not a huge thing that everyone talks about? Like, I read the novel by, it's up there, Gore Vidal, 1876. And his is a fictional representation of the political machine and how it dealt with the rise of the insurrection, basically, in 76 after the election, and sort of like behind closed doors, kind of like a West Wing treatment of it. And what would be really cool is to have another fictional representation that sort of puts it in a novel format to give you the emotion behind it, but also portrays like what I was reading about today, which is, I think it was in this actually, like the riots that were happening and the Ku Klux Klan activity that was coming back and the threatening of the state capitol houses. Sound familiar? In Louisiana. So, yeah, this is probably touching a little close, but I mean, I'm not from there, so maybe this is taught more in the region. We in grade school learned about California things, so maybe there's more regional history being taught, but I think that is a huge thing for the country, and everyone should have learned more about it, like what Reconstruction was, how it failed, and yeah, I feel like we went from Civil War to Rockefellers and like industrialism. Who was I listening to the other day? Brian at Bookish, who is a retired history teacher, I think in high school. We learned it all. Nice. Well, that's good. When you grow up knowing, I think that's an advantage. Yeah. I'm learning, just very late. I lost my train of thought. Brian Bookish, yes. He was talking about how he would show a video that was like NPR or a History Channel or something that they had produced, and it was like the men who built America. That's what it was, and they were all the white industrialists that were around the turn of the 20th century, like Rockefeller and Carnegie and whatever. And um, and it was like, but there's a whole other side. There's all the people who were in the laboring classes, and for before 1865, that's slaves. And like you can't just discount the actual work of people who actually built all these things. Like it's not just the people who are pushing the chess pieces around and directing everybody. Like so, yeah. I've gotten far away from my point. um, yeah, psychological aspect of that period and wanting to know more about that history. Um, yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's a better way to put it. So Janae lives in the North now, and America itself is like two countries. And then she said we had to learn it. My family grew up in the Jim Crow South. There's no way that they weren't teaching us. Yeah, you learn by living in some respects. Yeah. Um, I want to have a kibitz. Like invite people into this. Okay. So yeah, maybe that line appealed to me because it felt like something that I could definitely relate to in terms of having an offering ridiculed. He puts it in a way that everyone has that experience of being vulnerable, putting something out there, and then being shamed for it. And so to have that reproduced on a mass scale and in the conditions that it was and with the stakes as they were, that really impressed me with the volatile nature of that time period. And so there's lots of other bookmarks I put in here, or little tabs that I was fascinated about. He talks about what is it, the Ninth Crusade or something like this. He's talking about all the white school marms coming down to teach after the Civil War, and how it was a wave like a crusade, and they had lost a brother, they had lost a father. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that was a thing. I read a romance, I think by Beverly Jenkins, where there is a school teacher who is Black from the South who is teaching after the Civil War. I think it was Rebel. And yeah, just like things that Black legislators and things like that before the return of the White Terror, as he calls it in here. Anyway, I'm getting incoherent because I'm trying to like bring all these things that are swimming around in my head. So apologies for the incoherence. I've got one more tab that also made me think, and like another discussion point. So this is where he's talking about the early efforts of the idealists, or the people who started colleges right after the Civil War, and how that was a good move, but it was incomplete and it was flawed, and that's okay. And we could say that, and it's not cancel culture back here, but it's important to learn from those flaws and improve the next generation of improvements. And so he's talking about he's calling out Booker T. Washington here. So my first little thought about this book was that it was going to be very obviously flawed because I just listened to Stamped, and he's saying the positions of Booker T. Washington was here and W.E. Du Bois was here, and they're like two sides of an incomplete stance on Black liberation. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll read this, but it'll be obvious that he's not going far enough. And I'm reading it going, this is tougher than I thought. Like, seems really good to me. So maybe it'll come when I've read more of this. But I'm starting to see it in this argument about education. Booker T. Washington was more advocating a stance of like humble artisan education and not encouraging Black people to go to colleges and be educated like he was, which is strange because you didn't want to scare the white people. You wanted to have them okay with at least your small, humble goals and just start there, you know? And they were like, and the white people of the time were like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. We'll take that. So that's why Du Bois is coming back with like a maybe not. But here's the comment that made me stop and think. They forgot to, just as their successors are forgetting, the rule of inequality, that of the million Black youth, some were fitted to know and some to dig, that some had the talent and capacity of university men and some the talent and capacity of blacksmiths, and that true training meant neither that all should be college men nor all artisans, but that the one should be made a missionary of culture to an untaught people, and the other a free workman among serfs. And to seek to make the blacksmith a scholar is almost as silly as the more modern scheme of making the scholar a blacksmith. Almost, but not quite. Okay, so in that statement, he is comparing what he advocates, I'm guessing, I'm presuming, making the blacksmith a scholar. So rising up those people who are fit to learn, in his words, and allowing them opportunities to go to college and be scholars and teach their people, right? Teach everyone. And then he compares it to making the scholar a blacksmith, which is how he's characterizing Booker T. Washington's efforts of circumscribing the opportunities for Black people at this period so that they don't have reprisals of violence from the white people. And he says it's almost as silly, but not quite. So I guess he's just giving himself the upper hand in terms of like my stance is flawed as well, but it's not as flawed as that one over there that Booker T. Washington has, right? I thought that was interesting, and maybe there's more to it. I thought there was more to it, but in talking it out, now I feel like I've understood it more. I don't know. Anyway, that is as far as I've gotten in terms of like pull quotes and interesting things. But again, like a third of the way through, it's pretty easy reading in terms of comprehension. And I'm excited when I wish I could like understand the music parts. There's music in here. I don't sight read. But yeah. I already read the afterthought. I don't know. I'm not usually a person who turns to the last page and reads, but I read it because I opened it up and I thought it was cool. But I'll save that for later. So that is so good, and I am so excited. What else is going on in February? What other reads? I've heard all of Janae's reads multiple times, actually, which you just covered in your video. So I have Solitary on my list. I'm going to have a order to go through my local bookstore, and I have on it, possibles, because I can't afford all these, but I have like 6 that I'm want to buy. Solitary is on there, and The New Jim Crow is on there, and We're Not From Here is on there. I don't know if you guys have heard of that one. Is it a young adult? I think it's like a really heavy, but a young adult based book. And yeah, so I saw someone review that, and I don't remember now. I think I noted it down, but it's not in my head anymore. So maybe those 3. A lot of my scheduled reads, I'm a mood reader, so I'm trying to do the scheduled read. A lot of my scheduled reads are by Black authors this month, obviously. But I was looking at them thinking they were a little male focused, and so I may have to swap some of them out. I definitely want to read The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, which is, besides Their Eyes Were Watching God, like the second Black classic that I I have not read. So I need to read that. And then I wanted to pair it with Invisible, the Black woman lawyer who brought down the mobster, because I mean, that sounds pretty awesome. And they both have Invisible in the title, so they go together. Oh, I can't edit that out on the live. And so the two other ones that I had for that to swap out, Alice Walker, haven't read any Alice Walker, and Phoebe Robinson. So these are like my alternates if it gets too testosterone up in the TBR. Thank you. And I can't read these and like maintain my thought process at the same time. So I'll just keep catching up. We Are Not From Here is like the immigration instability of not being a citizen and being a brown person in the US, basically. It's contemporary. Yeah, the Solitary looks like it's going to be an impactful one. Invisible Man feels like it's going to be the same, and it's big, so I'm rationing a lot of time for that one. You are not hogging the comments. If Lauren and Nicole want to talk, they can put it in too. Yeah. Yeah. Apologies for the sneezes. I've been sneezing and having allergy problems since last March, so it's either like a mold mildew in the apartment thing or an ENT thing that just keeps cycling. I don't know. I haven't had a health appointment since March, and I have stayed in the apartment. So either one, I'm excited to find out once I go to the doctor again this year for routine checkups and stuff, like what's going on. We'll see. What else is going on? Has anyone started their BookTube spin books? I have not. It's sitting on there and not doing much. I did start the book for the author that's going to be on in March for the March of the Moderns. This is Camille DeMaio's book, The First Emma. It's in 19 teens as well as the 40s, and so it's a dual timeline. There's a guy who is married to an Emma and had two mistresses, both named Emma, and it's based on a true story. And one of them killed him, and they don't know who. But his last word was Emma, and I was like, this is too weird to be true. I mean, too weird to be fiction. So it started off pretty well. Yeah, something is in my apartment. I noticed that the doors and the windows do this weird thing where they like take the condensation and drip it indoors. And I'm like, that's not right. I've been here 7 years, 8 years almost. And I'm like, why am I just noticing that now? Maybe it's the window seals that are coming off or something, but what is this? The first woman who found out she was one of two Emmas. There's three. There's two mistresses and one wife. And the 1940s timeline is told from the viewpoint of the wife, and she's getting someone to help her write a book, I guess. And yeah, I'm interested. My interest is definitely peaked, but I don't know the shape of the story yet. I'm only like a few pages in. The first woman who found out I get it, okay. That makes sense. The first woman who found out she was one of two Emmas, that's who killed him. That's smart. That was funny. Okay, the only other thing I wanted to make sure to ping you guys about was like one of my reminders was going to be, I have a Patreon, I am unemployed, I have things going on like the book club and the readathon and other fun things in store for this year. So I'm trying to put that out there. And okay, I flashed this up earlier when no one was here, so I'll do it one more time. How do you schedule your content? Are you a crazy post-it noter like me? Or do you have some other way? Because I really wish I could trim that down and put it into my like planner journal. But I haven't figured out how to do that without taking up loads and loads of space yet. So if you guys have ways to do that, that is appreciated. And the other update for the channel is what I'm supposed to be doing in February. Can you guess? It's a big blank page. This is supposed to be filled up with the plot. I finished typing up the manuscript from last year, and I need to plot out what happens when, so that I make sure like the pacing is right and the holes of wait, continuity, this was wrong, she was already here, like traveling times and this kind of thing is straightened out before I go into like writing and language edits. And it's February 5th, but that is still, that paper is still blank. I got a good start. I got it pinned up, and you know, it's ready to go. It's just like the big picture stuff is hard to take a bite out of for me. So, okay. Janae uses a small journal and keeps a list of 1 page for video ideas. I have that. I guess it's like a date for when I film, when I edit and upload, when it's scheduled for, and then when I tweet out and post to Facebook and Instagram. So there's like 5 steps, and I do it on 5 different days so that I have like a constant cycle. So that's why I do that, because the colors and like the spacing and like the repetition help. I don't know, my brain. I just need a lot of journals. I think that's the secret. I think that is the ultimate secret. Well, I think that's all I was gonna cover today. It was fun to talk to you guys. Thanks for stopping by and contributing to the conversation, being supportive. I really appreciate it. I had Amrita in my comments recently say, I like your shelves because they're so real. And I was like, does that mean they're not pretty? Yes, that's what it means. Because, oh, other side, backwards. If you look in here, they're like crammed in all their ways. So yeah, that's real. That's me keeping it real. Thanks for coming by my channel, and I'll see you on Sunday with the next video. I think I have some tags and stuff. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for coming to talk and gab a little bit, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your Friday night. Happy weekend. Bye.